Got an awesome podcast today with a guy who's been at Bi-Vocational ministry for 20 years. Today we talk through things like sermon prep, the bivocational role, what kind of job to get if you want to work bivocationally. This one is a gem, and I'm so excited for you to listen. All right, let's go. All right, welcome. So we're here with Passing the Pulpit. Today we're with Pastor Wesley Perkins, who had a fun time getting to know this morning a little bit. But Pastor, would you just share with us, where you live, where you minister? You mentioned your bivocational, which we're going to be talking about, which I'm real excited about. But what does that look like? So maybe just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I do stay in a little town in North Carolina called Tar Heel, North Carolina, and everybody kind of gets that confused with the basketball team, UNC Chapel Hill, but we're actually 2 hours away from them. So, but it's always fun hearing the comments whenever people learn that I am from Tar Heel. I have been in ministry since 2005. It's all been bivocational, as you mentioned, and been several different roles that I've played. Some I have been on actual staff at churches, and some I've pretty much have stayed toward what's called pulpit supply, which is very much like an interim position or a transitional position, which is where a majority of my work has been. I'm currently helping a church down in a little town called Evergreen, called Lennon's Crossroads Baptist, and it's actually one county over from me. So that's kind of where I'm at, just kind of helping them go through the process from where they've had a pastor to resign, and now they're looking for another pastor. So I'm just feeling the need on Sunday mornings for them with just preaching God's word to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I am so interested in the role that you have. So I'm hoping you can shed a little light on that, because if I had to guess, depending on who's listening or what kind of demographic is tuning in, but I'm guessing that the role that you fill is a very familiar one to a lot of people, and in a lot of I'm guessing that average church size, the need for bivocational ministers, all those things, that there's a lot of folks that kind of work in the way you do. Is that your experience, and are you part of a team of pulpit supply, and do you guys maybe get a phone call or something? Like, how does that exactly work?
Yeah. So I'm actually part of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gone through some training to kind of get to know and how to overcome some of the roles that happens through going in and helping these churches. There's not really per se a list, although some of the county associations do have a list of available pulpit supply pastors. And these can be pastors who just fill in one time for them. Some of these churches will have different ones coming in over the period until they call someone that can kind of fill the need, kind of such like what I'm doing now at Lennon's Crossroads. They've just asked me to fill that pulpit need for them until they find the next pastor. But what the churches will do is they'll usually contact one of the local association offices, and they'll provide a list of folks who have said they're willing to come out and help fill in the need. And of course, the church is the one who has to call them. The association doesn't line that up or anything, because within the Southern Baptist Convention, each church is autonomous in that, they kind of do their own thing, but they've got a group that they can go to for support, and whatever needs they have.
Gotcha. So on the denomination level, a church would in theory express a need. Hey, we've got we have a pastoral need, and then the convention or the denomination will kind of line that up. Okay, that makes sense. That
or
makes sense.
they'll send them. Yeah, they don't actually line it up. They'll just send them a list of the ones who's available, and the
Okay.
church is responsible for lining them up. Yes, sir.
I know it's not exactly like this, but it sounds a little bit like what I have friends who are substitute teachers. A little bit like what kind of they go through is, um, but what a cool kind of hole you can fill with
Mhm.
you have like you said you've been through some training. Who did you do your training with?
Yeah, so the state convention does some locally across the state here in North Carolina, and then the North American Mission Board, which is a missionary leg of the Southern Baptist Convention, they have a group that focuses on helping to train pastors also, and they do. Um, I think it's now going back to a biweekly type training where they do like a podcast twice a week, and
Mhm.
but that's just kind of like what we're doing today, just them talking through some situations that churches may encounter and how to overcome them. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think what a it's an awesome service, I would say, that's offered. And I think, for a local, maybe even a smaller local, I'm going to say rural, but really any church, if you have a need and you're able to kind of call on the denomination and say, hey, we need some help here, and they can step in and help. So
Yeah.
I love that. So if someone's listening, so they could look into the North American Mission Board,
Mhm.
um, and even if you're part of a denomination, if your denomination has something like this, and maybe there's people that are listening and they're like, Matt, this is so normal. Like you don't even know you don't even know what you're talking about. That's totally possible. I very well could be the case that I am the one that's in the dark, and this is novel to me, but to others it's just kind of how it is. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, and and they started doing the trainings because they saw a need. Pastors um, aren't as plentiful as what they used to be. So they saw some needs in which they could help fill with the
Mhm.
churches, and so that's the reason why North Carolina kind of started the what they call uh, revitalize and replant training, and
Mm.
North American Mission Board calls it the same thing. Um, and so just basically trying to fill needs is what they're doing. So
I love that.
and there's some of us that's what our ministry focus is. I've got one friend that he's been in it for close to 50 years now, just doing this, which is out of the norm, because usually folks who are filling this type of ministry role is bivocational, but he's made it work as a full-time position. So
Huh. So
uh,
he's, again, to put it in layman's terms, he's a full-time substitute.
that's correct.
Wow. That's amazing, actually. It's amazing. Have you ever filled in for a pastor, even maybe someone who's gone on sabbatical? Do you guys fill those types of needs as well?
We do, yes, sir. Basically any type of role where the church needs a pastor to come in, we're willing to do that. A lot of pastors may have their, not necessarily, or for a lack of better term, their favorites that they may try to, get to fill in on a regular basis. Because a lot of pastors want to know that they've got somebody that they can trust in their pulpit, because you can very easily get sideways,
Yeah.
if with some folks coming in, that you don't want the church to start down the wrong way with
Yep.
them coming in. Um, so yeah, whenever I actually first started in this type of ministry, I was actually doing it on a youth ministry level, which was very interesting. Never had been in the ministry. I worked with youth ever since age 19. So here I was going into a new role, doing interim work for youth
Hmm.
ministry, which was very interesting. And we would help struggling churches that were struggling to get their youth groups off the ground, help fill in for pastors, if they were sick or, like you said, was going to be on a sabbatical. And then also we would help transition them from one youth pastor to another. So I've kind of just come full circle where I started out in youth ministry. Now I'm back at, on the church level after serving on staff for about 12 years. So yes,
Wow. Wow, what a journey, man. I love hearing different people's, their journeys through ministry and the experiences they've had. And I'm always really I don't know how to say it. I'm captivated by all the different ways that God orchestrates and facilitates, his church and his bride, and the different ways that the local body, fills needs and figures things out. To me, it's just amazing. So
right.
I love hearing what you've done. And so 20 years bivocational. You and I were talking beforehand, and I actually, not only through the podcast and talking to different people, but just my own experience. I live in Phoenix, which is a pretty big city, and I attend a lot of gatherings, and I just have a feeling, and that it's nothing special or unique, but just hearing more and more that the bivocational route is really, more and more people are having to kind of embrace this idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, for someone like you who's done it 20 years, if let's start with this question.
Okay.
What would you, knowing what you know now, 20 years later, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently when you began kind of the bivocational journey?
Well, set priorities. That was one of the things I wished I'd have done from the get go.
Mm.
Because not only are you working a full time job, now you have ministry on top of it, and ministry is something that takes place 24/7. I mean, you're getting phone calls at all times of night. So, just being new and young into the ministry, I mean, you wanted to be like Superman and do it all. But, that will cause burnout very quickly. And that's become, a focus through some of the different denominations, trying to work on keeping burnout from happening. But, what I found in order to keep that from happening is to set my priorities. One, don't neglect your family. The family is the most overlooked part in ministry, especially for a minister. And I've heard some say, it's almost as if, there's a divorce within the family because you've kind of neglected the family. So one of the things that I've done is, and it actually depends on my son's schedule now, because he's finishing up his schooling this semester. But usually we would take one night out of the week, usually something where he had a big test or a big project coming up. So we'd take, just for instance, like a Thursday night. Me and my wife, that's our date night. We're out, we're having dinner, doing whatever, she wants to do, go shopping, or, grab groceries or something, but we're out of his way, and the house is quiet so he can concentrate on what he's doing. So we took advantage of that and just allowed that to be our time together. And then one of the things that I started doing is whenever my son was younger, Saturday mornings, that was mine and his time. It was breakfast, we'd go get breakfast. And then if he wanted to go to a store, normally it was either, a sporting goods store or something that he wanted to go to. And we would go do that, to do that. And what I did with that initially is, I set it up so that he was the only one that could break it. If there, if there was something, that I needed to be part of on a Saturday, I would ask him for permission, and And what God would do a lot of times is I wouldn't even have to ask him, because he actually started serving in the church that I was at on staff. They actually hired him on staff to handle audio and video needs on a part-time basis while he's going through school. Actually, they started out. He started out in that position when he was in sixth grade. So and they eventually made him part of the staff because of that. But often at times he would see that stuff was coming up with maybe something I needed to be part of. And he would just come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, I know this is coming up. You probably want to go be part of that." And he was, that's just only a way that God could work. In a little child's heart and mind.
Yeah.
On that, and he knew that there were certain things that I like to participate in. One of the former churches we were at has a men's weekend where they come in and some of the members there are always calling and inviting me to come back and participate in that. And he always says, "Hey, I know that you want to go to that, so go to that." Or if he has something, he'll say, "Hey, I've got something coming up this weekend. I've got to be part of, I'm not going to be able to do it." And still today we do that. He's a senior in college, and, that's still the deal. And, and I'm grateful for that because whenever they get into the teenage years, they don't want to be with mom and dad or, grandma and grandpa. So that's one of the things that I did early on was to set that priority. And I would encourage those who are getting into it to schedule that time. Go to your calendar, just black out those times, and don't override them. Unless it's something that is very, very necessary for you to do. Because what I found out when I was on staff is a lot of people will become understanding of your schedule, and they realize that, hey, if I don't get him on the phone, there's a reason, and they know that, hey, he'll give me a call back. So just set those limitations in that, and guard your time. So
yeah, amen. That I love what you said about with your son. You gave him the power to break the commitments. Right. So the onus and the responsibility, the power is in his hands, which I think expresses to him, you're the most important thing during this time. And the only way I'm going to get out of this time is if you tell me that it's okay.
Right.
That's what a cool way. I have a son. I know many listening have sons, daughters, etc. But that's an amazing way to express to those kids, you really matter, and you're the most important thing to me.
Right.
So really cool. That's good advice. Did you have I love what you said too about when you first started, you came in kind of like Superman. I mean, that's, right. Man, brother, if we had $1 for every time a pastor said that, we'd be flying around in personal jets. But what you said is so important. So do you have a specific memory of a moment or something that happened where you realized like, oh, I'm really overstretched myself. Like I need to pull back from this moment.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it was a specific time, but at one point in time, I started noticing the drift with my family. Where communication was really not there. I'd wake up one day and the wife would say, "Hey, we got to go here," and I'm like, "When did this happen?" And so then I realized, hey, you know what? I'm starting, or I have been overcommitting myself, so I need to start pulling back. And that actually happened while I was on staff. Because churches love to do things on Saturday mornings. It seems like Saturday mornings all the opportune time, and I realize that's because people work during the week, and
Right.
that's what works for most people. Um, and they don't, they're not thinking about the aspect of those who are serving in ministry, especially bivocationals. You've got Sunday mornings that you're preparing for, Wednesday nights, if you're having Wednesday night prayer services, uh, plus working, your 40-hour plus week, and so you just have to kind of say, hey, I've got to put some guardrails up, and here's my guardrails. And like I said, people will come to respect that and understand it.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, especially if again, if you're preaching regularly, I think, personally, I think you need to be honest about how your family runs, how things go. And it just seems to me like it'd be a natural thing to be expressing like, oh, yesterday my son and I, during our man time, we were out fishing or whatever. And then your congregation hears that. And I think to your point, they eventually start putting the dots together like, oh, my pastor spends Saturday with his family.
Right.
That's why I can't get a hold of them, and so, people are, I think people, given the benefit of the doubt, but I think you're right. Like they eventually get to know the schedule, and they respect the schedule. And, I think any of us would say, yeah, I want my pastor, I want their family to be healthy. I want them to have healthy boundaries. I think everybody would say that. I think it's the unhealthy person that says, oh, well, I want my pastor available 24/7 at my beck and call, to do whatever I want, whenever I want. That's not, that's not good for anybody.
Right. So, well, and I look at it just as, any type of other professional, a doctor or a lawyer, if you can, make an appointment with them. Have your calendar so that you can set those appointments up, and and stick to that. And yeah, there'll be those emergencies that come up. Maybe somebody's in the hospital, not doing very well, and you need to get there. Those things will come, but try to schedule everything that you can.
Yeah.
So
yeah, really good advice. And again, something I hear almost on repeat, just this idea of, prioritize your life, get things in order. Don't get, don't overwhelm yourself. You're not Superman, and that is okay. God did not call you to be Superman. And in fact, there was only one who was superhuman in those ways, and that's just Christ himself. So
that's correct. Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about, so in your story, you have experienced both a bivocational role and a full-time role.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, for those who are listening, because I think, if I may say so, but I think part of one of the thinkings is that, well, if I could just have a full-time role at a church, then I'll finally be living into the fullness of my calling.
Yep.
But my experience was different than that personally, and others are, but I'm curious from your perspective, what are, as you think about it, what are the pros and cons to being full-time or bivocational? And even maybe a deeper question of, but when you went full-time, did you then recognize, oh, there are some huge benefits to being bivocational?
Yeah, so I really wasn't full time when I was on staff. I was still a bivocational role,
Gotcha.
but there are still some differences in that. Being on staff, I mean, churches love meetings, committee meetings and stuff like that. So, you're going to have all those meetings, and they're going to schedule them during the week. That's going to interrupt your schedule, because and we may talk about this later, the sermon prep process.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have like I said, calendar, block out some stuff on calendar, and kind of set that up for different times that you do different things in order to prepare. Um, so it's okay, let them know up front that, hey, I can't make all of these meetings. Um, and so being not on staff, um, it frees up a lot of that time so that you're not on a on the church time schedule. As far as all these meetings and everything, you can pick and choose a little bit more.
Yeah.
Where when you're on staff, there are some things that yes, you're going to have to be at, you're going to have to attend, and you just have to work your schedule around those times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a great point. Maybe something people don't think of, because you just think, oh, if I could just be a full-time minister, I'm just going to get to full-time minister to people, but that's not it. It's no, you're at the full-time, you're at the full-time mercy of this schedule, which to your point includes meetings, conversations, emails, admin. There's so many different things. So
right. So yeah, and one of my friends' dad, he was in a bivocational role. Then he went full time in a church, and he quickly went back to a bivocational schedule within the church that he was full time. And one of the things whenever we were talking, one of the things he told me was that during the day he felt like he had nothing to do. Of course, you're making sermon prep, and doing your personal study. But as far as ministering to other people, he was like, from 8 to 5, he said he just sits there and stares at walls. And then the people are at home after 5, so he goes and ministers then. So that's the reason why he went back to bivocational. Is like, listen, I can work a 8 to 5 job and do the stuff, minister to people afterwards.
Yeah. So, well, good on him. I mean, that's a high level of integrity to say, hey, I'm not using my time well here.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. Well, let's talk now about sermon prep. You brought it up, and I'm curious again. So this is a huge area that I think we can really help each other on, having conversations like this one. And for people listening who are also bivocational or who are also in a similar role like you're in, maybe they can glean something from the way you do it. So would you share with us, how do you come at sermon prep? How do you think about it? How do you manage the time of it? Whatever you want to share, we're all ears.
Okay. Well, because of time limitations, sometimes I try to keep at least a sermon, my kind of lost for words here, a calendar of sermons upcoming. If I'm serving in a role like I am right now, where I'm filling in every Sunday at the same church, I'll try to make an outline for 2 months of what it is that I feel like God's leading me to preach on. This role that I'm serving in right now is kind of been easy because God's been hitting on faith and obedience for over 6 months now. But I do have stuff planned out for 2 months, because if they were to call a pastor, I know it's going to be somewhere between 1 to 2 months before that pastor actually gets in. So that's what I'll do, is just kind of look ahead for 2 months. Some of those I will do like series, where it may be, a 2-week series up to maybe a 6 or 7, maybe 8-week series that I will do, just depending on some of the holidays that's coming up, and I don't necessarily try to cater toward the holidays very much, but there are some like Easter and Christmas that you definitely want to be sure that you can get in there and hit those very well. If God leads you, first of all, let me say that, have God to lead you in that sermon prep. That's the most important. Pray with him. So in that schedule, what I do is on Sunday evenings, I just start praying about it. Even though I know what's on my calendar, where I'm heading, I pray just to make sure that's where God wants me to go. Yeah, and then I start to begin on Mondays, and usually it's either very early Monday or very late. Just because of how my schedule works sometimes. I mean, I may be leaving the house early of a morning, or I may be getting in late in the evening. So I'm kind of able to kind of be flexible with that schedule on that. But Mondays, I start just meditating, getting the verses, um, just reading those. If you're driving down the road, pull up the Bible app and just play those verses over and over, and just let God speak to you through it. And then on Tuesdays through Thursdays, I start putting everything together. If you stick to the good seminary taught 3-point sermon points every week. You got a day for every point. But just start putting your outline and your sermon notes together for that. And I like to try to do it each day on a certain point. And then on Thursdays, after I get the third point, I just kind of pull everything together. Fridays, I just kind of continue to work on the sermon notes, and then have everything together by before I go to bed Friday evening. And then on Saturday, just something that I do because it just kind of helps me remember what's in my notes when I get up Sunday morning is I will retype it that Saturday night before I go to bed. So I may be up 1-2 o'clock in the morning retyping it. But to me, that's just something that helps me kind of remember, and it's fresh on my mind when I get up Sunday morning. And then during breakfast, I'll sit there and I'll reread my notes. And a lot of times on that Sunday morning, God will start showing me something different. And so I'm having to change stuff. So, or giving you a different aspect of what you're wanting to hit on. So that's just kind of my sermon, how I put my sermon together. And whenever I start working on the outline, I tell people I'm not smart enough to come up with a lot of stuff myself. So a lot of pastors are the same way. They have some tools that helps. So I have a lot of commentaries that I will go to look at that. Sermon Central is a great tool. I often tell people, try to get your outline before you go and you start looking at these helps. Because one of the things is plagiarism. That's been something that's been huge the last 3 or 4 years, especially with sermons. And I'll take a detour just a minute just to talk about that. I've had some professors in the past and also pastors and mentors, that just says don't get caught up in that, because God's word is God's word, and the Holy Spirit's going to repeat some things to folks from time to time. But if you do quote something that you need to give credit to the folks who wrote that. A lot of times, whenever I'm out on the road driving, I'll listen to different folks that I'm familiar with and listen to their sermons. And a lot of times, something may stick out that I say, man, I can use that. This coming Sunday, and I always call them or send them a text. Hey, you said something in your sermon that I would like to use. And a lot of times those pastors are like, use it and don't give me no credit for it. Which tells me that they're in it for God. They're not in it for self. Um, but anyway, using those tools like that, commentaries, Sermon Central.
Mhm.
I use Sermon Central a lot. Illustrations. If you get sermon block, I mean, you've got to have somewhere to go. And I certainly understand sermon block. One of the seminars that I went to that Tony Evans was at, one of the other participants asked, says, "Hey, you're studying all week long and you're just not getting that. And then it's Saturday night and you still don't have anything for sermon tomorrow." He said, what is your suggestion? And Tony Evans says, "Well, first of all, you better hope the store's open and go grab one of my books and preach out of my book." Uh, so, there are some great tools that, if you do have that sermon block, you can go to it. And of course, I tell people, don't take it all at the same time, use it as your bones and put your meat into it, make it relevant for the congregation that you're preaching to.
Yep. Yeah, that is such a key point of advice, right? Is a couple things you said, which I love. First of all, I was the same as you. I would, in my experience, it was if I had a passage, then I would spend time myself with that, with nothing else, and I would write out, okay, what ideas am I coming up with? What am I seeing? What biblical references come to mind? And then go to the commentaries, the resources, the websites, then listen to other people preach it or speak through it. Yeah, to your point, to kind of see, part of it was just to see, like, am I able mentally to manage, God, what do you want from this passage? And then the second thing you said, which again is so important, and if someone younger in the ministry is listening to this, never forget that you have been called to a specific local church, and that specific local church, God is well able to speak through you to that specific community. And so what you're saying is so important. It's like, for instance, if you were to plagiarize the entire sermon from someone, so you're in North Carolina, let's pretend you took a sermon from someone who lives up in Portland. Well, that's literally across the United States. That's an entirely different culture, an entirely different community. And so, how much of that sermon even makes sense to a local community, let's say that's in Tar Heel, North Carolina, like, right. It's just totally different. And I think that's I think, again, my experience has been that most everybody understands this idea that God has planted me and called me to this specific community, sure. and will therefore then speak through me to this community. So again, I love what you said, just using these other tools as kind of to buttress or to help build up or strengthen what God is already kind of leading you to speak on. And so something you said, but do you manuscript, do you write out the entire sermon then?
Normally I don't.
Okay.
I usually have like paragraphs. That was, I can't remember the title of the book, but whenever I was first going into ministry, one of my great friends had given me that book, and it was basically preaching sermons without notes. And that was just one of the things that, I picked up from that book, was just do some paragraphs in there, and just something to jog your memory, because I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, as I'm putting it together, I'm preaching it to myself as I'm putting my notes together. So, some of those things come back to memory as you're reading through those outline notes. So yes, sir.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just curious. Everybody's different, and again, I think this is an area where you have to embrace your own process, I would say.
Right.
It doesn't it's not going to work the same way for you as it does for others. But I thought it was really interesting what you said, that you retype the entire thing out the night before. I think that's an amazing way to recommit it to memory, um, and even maybe to think through. I bet this happens to you a lot, but you're writing on a point and you go, I think I'm going to say that a little bit differently.
Exactly.
Like, now that I write it out again, I don't really like the way that sounds. I'm gonna kind of rework that a little bit. So,
Right.
do you do much training? Do you do much work with younger pastors who are, doing a similar position like yours, and what does that look like if you do?
Yeah. Well, I do have a couple of pastors that I meet with, and along, um, I also have a couple of mentors, uh, people that serve as mentors to me that I meet with, and I try to meet with them, once every month or maybe every 2 months, just depends on how our schedules are going. Um, but with the pastors, I mean, I'm just there to try to encourage them. Because again, just listening to them, I mean, they remind me so much of myself when I was first getting in, all these ideas, and you're just wanting to implement all at one time, and so what I try to just tell them is say, hey, just think of it this way. You've got all these ideas, and you can't throw change on everybody at one time. Um, or all these changes that they're wanting to make all at once. But I tell them just to imagine, holding a handful of tokens, and take those tokens out one at a time, and make a change with it, because in kind of in the culture of the church, if you give them that token and they like it, they'll give you that token back, so you'll have it for future use. But if they don't like the change that you made, I mean, they may charge you that token plus a couple more, and you know, um, and I try to tell them, at some point in time, you're going to run out of tokens, because these folks can't handle the changes that you're trying to do. And a lot of times when you run out of those tokens, you're frustrated. The church is frustrated, and you're going to be parting ways. Um, I try just to get them to see, hey, take it slow. Uh, you, you know, uh, some pastors, whenever they go into churches, they like to wait a year before they start making any changes, which I think is very wise, because one, you get to learn your members, you get to learn what motivates them, what doesn't motivate, and then that way, you're better suited. They know you better. They've built their trust for you, and then you can slowly make those changes, that God's leading you to make. Because sometimes their vision is clouded whenever your vision, for where God wants to take you, it is not. And think about Moses, as he was leading the Israelites. I mean, he was focused on where God wanted him to go, but the people behind him was grumbling. So you have to keep that in mind too. You're dealing with people. They process things differently. Um, they have um, their own priorities. Where they think things should go also. So just have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And just be Kent Clark, not Superman.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it funny how we get older and you just every year you kind of you reflect and you think back, like, and you go, why was I so wound up about that stuff? And I think to your point about I think as you get older, you recognize you have more of a sense of the nature of time. And so waiting a year or being patient for a year, you understand is really not a long time.
Right.
But, when you're younger, you do feel like again, to your point, if you're 25, 28, 30, 30, whatever, and you got this new job, you want to do the best job you can do. You want to basically reform the entire community, and you want everybody to be baptized, on the in that next baptism Sunday. And it's just you just have to be we have to be willing to take the time.
Mhm.
And that is a blessing of being a little older, is that you get less wound up about the timing of things, and are a little more willing to be patient. So yeah, that's super good advice for young ministers.
Yeah, and also on the flip side of that, there's some things that um, as pastors are going through some changes. The congregation wants them made immediately. I mean, and sometimes they don't understand the back process, the behind the scenes process that it takes to get this, and so you're having to take and mentor them, and talk them through some of the processes too.
Yep. Yep. There's a lot. There's so many different ways you can be an encouragement to the church. So my last bit of questions for you, again, and kind of in the bivocational secular role, but how did you choose the secular job you have? Maybe you didn't choose it. Maybe it just kind of chose you in a sense.
Uh-huh.
But was there a process for that, or what kind of, do you encourage others in the bivocational role? Do you encourage them towards a kind of a specific kind of job that is more amenable to being a bivocational minister? How did you think through that, and what do you do?
Well, whenever I first came into ministry,
Hmm.
and I came into ministry, kicking and screaming because I didn't want to be in ministry, and anybody going into ministry can probably relate to that. But the role that I was in at the time, I mean, it was an 8 to 5 role, and it gave me my weekends, and it gave me the evening times, that
Hmm.
I could do ministry, um, and so as time has gone on, I mean, I've changed roles, like currently, well, all of my roles has been sales related positions. Some has been non-mobile, in an office. But over the past 15 years, I've actually, an outside salesman where I do some traveling. Um, that depending on the schedule with that, that may not line up very good with a bivocational role. One of the things whenever I got the position I was at, I was actually on staff at a church, and um, I went to them and told in the Southern Baptist, the leaders are called deacons, others are called elders, but I went to the deacons um, and told them, I said, guys, here's what I've been presented with. Um, it's going to be a little bit of a different role from where I was at. Even though the role prior to that, I was still in outside sales, but the company was very lenient with me on my schedule. In fact, I mean, if I went on a mission trip, they would pay for me to go on that mission trip. Wouldn't make me take vacation time. They, they pay my way and everything. I mean, just great company. But guys started moving me away from them, and so the position I'm in now actually requires me to be out a little bit more. I mean, I may spend anywhere from 2 nights to a whole week out on the road, depending on what it is I've got to accomplish that week. Um, so that doesn't lean or fit very well for Wednesday or during the week services. And again, you got the meetings that you want to you that come up. But I went to the deacons and told them, hey, here's what I'm presented with. I feel like God's, and all of them was like, hey, listen, we understand it. And that made me realize then that, even the church understands that you have schedules, or work somehow comes, or has to be realized in there by them. And so I took the position, and it was very easy to feel like you were cheating the church sometimes, because I couldn't be there on all the Wednesday nights. I couldn't be there at all the meetings, which is eventually one of the reasons why it was um, advantageous to step out of the staff role. And go into what I'm doing, which is mainly dealing with Sundays. Um, so, if some churches will be understanding of that. I mean, I have a pastor friend that he works, um, a kind of rotating schedule, and some Sunday mornings, he's walking in right as the choir is finishing so he can preach, but that works for them. So, one of the things I would just say is be upfront with the church. Let them know what you can and can't do. Most of them is going to be understanding, and, sometimes it may not work, and that's not the church that God wants you to serve in, or the role that he wants you to serve in. And the flip side of that is, you don't want to cheat your employer. In the role that I'm in, I mean, it could be very easy for me to cheat them, because I don't have anybody watching me every day, but I often tell folks, they know if I'm working or not because they see what I'm doing,
Yeah.
the fruits of it, just like the fruits of our labor for ministry, if you don't have any oversight, looking over you every day in your job, they can see the fruits of your labor too. So don't cheat your job. Be upfront with everybody on what it is, and just understand that, sometimes it can start out and everybody's in agreement with it. And then, everybody's priorities can change, which that was one of the things that happened with me on staff, where they were okay with it. And then, it just started slowly becoming kind of not okay. And which is fine. I still love the church, pray for them daily. It's just our priorities, started taking different directions, which, God does that sometimes, he moves his own.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's a hard one perspective that you have, which is like you said, like, hey, it's okay. Their direction changed, and it's, we're good. Still getting to minister, and they still need to do what they need to do. And again, that's another huge point of like, we got to be really careful about what we get offended over, and got to really manage our own kind of emotions with some of these things. But
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but yeah, one of the things that kind of helped me with that is, I had someone one time that says, hey, just remember, they're not getting mad at you on a personal level. They're getting mad at you in the role that you play.
Right.
And once I started looking at it that way, I mean, it started making a whole lot more sense, because at the end of the day, those guys, I mean, they're still friends with you. They talk to you, they care about you. It's just the role, that both play, just had different priorities.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your credit, and in your life, you're still getting to do, like you said, like, you're still getting to go work on Sundays, and that works with your schedule. So you get to be part of this pulpit supply, and getting to minister and preach, and it's amazing. So, there still is upside there.
Yeah.
So, well, man, it's been really fun talking with you and hearing, your perspective.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if there's anything we missed or any last encouragements you might give.
Um, no, I mean, it's been it's been a ride in ministry. I would like to say although it's been fun, but it's not all been fun. But we just have to keep our hope in Christ and continue to do what He has called us to do, even whenever others, um, you know, are upset at us. Think we should be doing something else. Just continue on. I even tell folks sometimes, whenever folks start saying, "Hey, here's what you need to do," and all that. I even tell folks whenever I started in ministry, my mother would often say, "Hey, you need to do this during your sermon or that," and I'd just look at her and say, "Mom, I love you, but I'm following God." And she respected that, and she knew that I meant it in love,
Yeah.
but everybody has their own way of how you should do things. But be you. Don't try to be someone else. Just be who you are and who God made you to be.
Amen. That's probably a great note to end on. And so thank you again, and I hope to talk to you soon. And we appreciate you.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, brother.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another pastor or ministry leader who you think might benefit from this conversation. And if you're looking for more tools and resources to help you preach and lead with confidence, be sure to check out sermoncentral.com/podcast. Sermon Central is the largest online resource hub for pastors and ministry leaders. From illustrations to outlines to media, you'll find everything you need to preach and lead effectively. So check out sermoncentral.com/podcast, where you'll even find a special podcast listener discount on our membership pricing. Check it out and stay tuned for our next episode.